But I want to appreciate the opportunity we get from PILO, and PILO stands for the Program to Improve Learning Outcomes. I stand here on behalf of Professor Mary Metcalf, who is our CEO. I was not orientated on how this thing works, so see, it went to the other ones. I'm watching here, but it's also this not my. Which one? Oh, so we at PILO, as Kaya said, we're about 11 years old now, and we want to share a model that comes from that time as per the program request. Now, my time is moving, but my slides are not moving, so I'm going to be green button again. I'm doing that. It exposes my. Now, somebody should come up and assist me as we do this thing. But just to say that PILO, as I think the CEO said and Dr. Khoza said, and Kaya also mentioned that a bit, was founded in a context at a time when everybody was worried about learning outcomes in the country, in the context of massive investments in trying to improve education, and the amount of resources that were seemingly not taking us where we're supposed to go. Or there's a better green. And when it was founded, we needed to address those things that, or at least was set up to say, how do we then contribute towards addressing those challenges that we face in the system in a manner that enables us to have equity, to deal with inequalities, to open access to education, and to allow a lot of privileged disadvantaged learners and schools in the system to perform better. And we did a few, the design was meant to do a few things. Among them, to focus, we said, let's focus on impactful learning impact on learning outcomes, so that all learners who go through the system come out better prepared for the world ahead of them. And we were mandated to implement a program that can be scalable and replicable, that doesn't pick and choose selected pockets and create excellence amidst a sea of disarray and poverty. We also considered the issue of affordability. I understood the constraints even 11 years ago, 12 years ago of the system. It's even worse today to say, how do you design a program that's not going to want extra resources that are not available in the system? We also said it's important for us to be able to, Dr. Khoza talked about not run parallel systems, that locating responsibility for what needs to be done inside the system with people who are functionally there to do so. And we understood that there's also need to undertake a change program in the beginning so that when you bring these changes, they are managed and adapted by the system. Primary, a key feature of our work was that we also were mandated, part of mandate was that we needed to make sure that the programs that we innovate, that we implement, will stay in the system when our time is up. They will stick. We call it embedding in some ways, that the system itself will be orientated towards those functions. Now, I'm going to share a bit about what the model entails, looks like. I've got only 4 slides. This is the second one. But we're focusing on what we call an instructional core, where teaching and learning must take place, because we believe that if there's going to be any improvement in the system, that's where it must happen. All the other important functions and aspects of the system that Dr. Khoza talked about are important and critical, but their primary responsibility is to make sure that that core, that teacher-learner content triangle actually functions. That's where teaching and learning happens. If we take that out, there's no system. And then we're saying that it is important for us to understand that learning happens in the classroom, nowhere else, and that's a primary center. We know today we can be talking about more innovations around these spaces. and I'm going to run through this as my time is moving fast, to say as we do focus on the teaching and in the classroom, the content of what is being taught is important. So is what the learner learns in that space, and so is what the intersection between those spaces are able to give us. But it is more than just one shoe fits all. We understand that learning and teaching in any classroom actually deals with different types of learners at different levels, and by therefore it must be differentiated. The teacher is important. Someone mentioned a lot that without a teacher at the center in the professional development, will continue to struggle in terms of practices that they employ and do that. And we're happy that NECT is zooming into that space to better understand where things are at. And this requires reflections and monitoring on a daily basis. This, by the way, is a model that we are imparting on the system, and I'm going to run through. But outside of the classroom system, there are other levels. One is outside classroom in the school, that's what we call the SMTs. These are people who are tasked with maintaining efficiency, making sure that the school functions well. But we believe that they also have a responsibility for teaching and learning in that sense. And it is part of our responsibility to make sure that the core of what the system exists for is actually sustained and maintained. And we do a lot of work in that space around those issues, how best to get them, with different people playing a different role in that setup. Outside the school system, we have where we look at what the district then offers in terms of supporting the school system. And in particular, we focus on looking at what the possibilities of how schools and teachers can come together outside the particular school system to offer what people call PLCs and find ways of improving their own professional development and assisting each other in a context, as you have mentioned, of severe shortages, for instance, around subject advisors and the likes. But outside the schooling system and the PLCs come the district. People have made it a point that the districts are a critical lever. And that's been that true for us, as PILO from the onset, that districts are a critical lever on engaging supporting the school system and making sure that these improvements do take place. They are critical, but we also know there are constraints. They have no authority, they have no resources, they've got no political power, but they are the managers of the schools. They are the clearest, closest representative for the system in front of the schooling system. Principals report to them. And it is important for us in that sense as well that when you talk about district and as a leverage of improvement, you talk in that context of knowing that the first support that schools get come from districts. And therefore, it has been important for us in our work to identify particular officials in the system to work with and support in that space. One, subject advisors who help with content management and development in the schools. Second, managers who are the principals in a sense of schools, who on a daily basis ensure that everything that needs to happen, functionality, curriculum, but we have over the years been saying that they also must see themselves as curriculum leaders, not just as general managers who run around and make sure that infrastructure is there, that other functionality purposes are taking place. And we believe that these things need to happen in a manner that sustains a lot of things. A bit of what we have done and where we come from, in KZN we ran what we call a Jigimfundo campaign, largely supported by the NECT, and remain eternally grateful over the past 10 years. They've been a major fan of that program. And this is where our biggest learnings that I'm sharing here today will be coming from, including the aspect of embedding. We worked in Northern Cape in the early days, supported by what was new money from the mines there. It lasted for about 2 years, and we're still trying to find our way back there. And I know we've been talking with Karis also about that possibility. In Gauteng, we ran what we call Kariambe program, which focused on the GT phase, again, training SMTs to deliver this model that we've shared above around improving curriculum management and delivery. And this was an innovation in the sense that the advisors in Gauteng actually were set up, trained to do the training. And it's a model that we integrated into our work beyond that. In the Free State, colleague, we partnered a bit with Kagiso Shanduga Trust, the program in Mtewa and Fezile Dabi, and pointing some of the things that we're doing with SMTs and a bit of leadership work in that space, which was a very fruitful collaboration while the program lasted. And we're still maintaining relationships with colleagues in the Free State, in the two districts in particular, because of the great impact that work has done. We are now also begun working. COVID disturbed a bit the processes, but in Mpumalanga, in what we call SUMA, Dr. Simlani is leading that program at national level, where we are testing. The idea is to test the PILO model, test in a way that it's getting used by a third party in Mpumalanga, but it's focusing on numeracy and literacy in the foundation phase, and processes around unfolding that are ongoing. Mary is actually in a meeting towards unblocking that process as we speak. But it is there, and our partners are supporting us to tour and mentoring. All along these spaces, there's a lot of other key partners who've been working with us in conceptualizing, thinking, in getting the some of the ground, like Zanexa here. I see Gail here. I didn't notice, and Jed, and I see James. We've also been able to take lessons that we gathered from that model and implementation KZN into a national space, where we worked with DBE to create a model that sought to how do we recover lost learning and teaching time over COVID, but also how do we do it in a way that also acknowledges that COVID was not the only cause of learning loss in the system. There are other things that happen regularly, like, for instance, you have strikes in the communities, you have load shedding that affect teaching and learning. How do we create a system that supports? A lot of what went into that RP process and documentation emanated from the lessons that we have learned from KZN and those other spaces. Just as a reminder that the work that we did in those spaces covered SMT training, to improve efficiency of the instructional core delivery at that level. We focus on second managers because they are the nearest, they are supervisors of schools, and it's important that they take more responsibility in leading curriculum management and delivery, but also that they are better placed to support and ensure that there's accountability on what is monitoring and support what needs to happen. Again, it's a district, part of setting them up is beyond district officials that I mentioned here, is that we look at district directors, for instance, the management committee team as a functional team, to say they too have a responsibility to play in assisting the system to function more efficiently, especially the system to function more efficiently in as far as its mandate of improving the instructional core is concerned. And we run a number of leadership sessions. And primarily we do this because we believe that the leadership systems needs to be assisted to embrace change, to see them as change leaders, as change managers, to create conditions for their adaptation and inclusion of this program that you're talking about, but also to ensure that when the sustainability that I talked about, embedding the stickiness, it will not happen if the leadership itself does not own, does not lead, does not see the need for improving and maintaining that change happen. I'm going to share a bit about what we are learning. And again, because of time constraints, I've limited myself to some of the recent work that has come to us, that has happened. We've had a 2-year process led by JET Education Services. We evaluated, in KZN in particular, the work that we did and tried to understand if indeed some of this work is sticking in the system. Is it being taken out? It's making a difference. And again, I'll offer a summary. I should volunteer, I don't know if we haven't done it, that we share some of the findings for people to read a bit later on. But just to say, out of that finding, a few lessons have come up. One is that JET compared the model and the design that we have with international standards and come out and said that the PILO model of implementation actually meets international standards, except except that we did not focus a lot on pedagogical content development. Just out of 5 standards that I used, 4 of them were found to be consistent with international best case models. We've learned over the years that what we call the language of change and the language of focusing on a structural core has been adopted by the system. That everybody, when they talk over the years, has been to say we need to focus. They talk about the agent, that is imperative. It's not something that you can wait and do next year. We need to start now in saying, how do we do things that ensure that we break inequalities and we create better access? The language of change around curriculum instruction has been increasing at all levels of the system. You talk from the HOD or the MEC to the principal and the teacher in a lower, in grade 1, for instance. They'll talk about the same things. They're talking language that will say, despite the constraints that we have some agency, ourselves, professional agency, that can make a difference even in this context. We've received reports in the findings of the evaluation that everybody acknowledges that there's improved collaboration among different sub-directories in the system. They work better. In the power, when we started, everybody was saying we work in silos, nobody knows what everybody else is doing. It's not yet there, but there's marked improvement in people collaborating. And also people breaking the silos, also people reflecting on practice. So there's ongoing talk about what is happening in the classroom, what's happening around teaching and learning, and people are now more free to share even their weaknesses and the experiences of things that are working well without fear of being looked on as being watched by a policeman. There's a report, the evaluation says officials and teachers, different levels, report that there's a marked shift from what they call a command and control attitude and practice system, where those on top instruct and orders others to do, but rather we're moving into a more collaborative and mutual respect situation, where even when somebody, for instance, you have not covered the curriculum as it is supposed to be, you are not afraid of sharing and saying, I didn't cover this because there were these challenges, and you know that you get support from your supervisors to assist you in going forward in that space. We have also learned the importance that along the way, that whatever interventions that were developed and designs were developed in collaboration with officials at whatever level that we're operating at, be it province, in districts, so that they know what we're doing, they fit into the process, and they contribute towards in that space. There's a lot of tools that emerge from the programs, but we also work with a paradigm that says tools are not rules. They are not like the Bible, Murizo. They can be adapted and used flexibly. So when they are out there, schools, districts, provinces have the liberty to adapt them for their own uses. So that you don't often even find PILO tools out in the system, but you find principles that are behind those tools that are being used a lot. I said there's collaboration that has improved, but there's also a note that emerged from evaluation that as much as people across levels are working together, when you go through different levels, there are tensions and challenges because the system still makes different demands without touching the different levels onto the system. So you plan a workshop, you can see, is an example, in a district, and tomorrow they get a letter from DBE that the DG is coming and everything must stop so that they attend to the DG. And it creates confusion in the system. I think this should be the last one, which is a big one, and I don't have time to go into that. And one of the focus that you had was evidence as part of the necessary conditions for making decisions. It's taking up a bit, I think Dr. Koza talked about that a bit, to say people increasingly identifying data, in particular what comes from SASM through DDD, what comes from exams, and they analyze and reflect and use it to make decisions about what and how to support. And thank you, Program Director.